It didn't start with a fight. It didn't even start with a sound. It started with a number on my phone screen, 3:14 a.m. That was the time he saw the last message I'd sent, hours earlier, asking if we could please just talk. He'd let it sit there, read and unanswered. And in that quiet moment, my world tipped on its axis. His life became the one I watched, and mine was just the space I watched it from. My thumb developed a life of its own, a constant nervous little habit. Unlock, open the app, check for anything, close. Over and over all day long. A small, sad ritual. We had a shared photo album we'd called The Archive. It was supposed to be our story. After he left, it became the place I'd go to feel the ache. I'd scroll through the pictures one by one. There we were on a windy beach, hair all over our faces. There we were, covered in flour after trying to make pasta from scratch. There we were, asleep on a train, my head on his shoulder. Each photo was a little ghost. It was a strange kind of pain, like missing a limb you can still feel. Then the quiet part of my brain turned into a detective. I started digging through the past, looking for the exact moment things went wrong. In this picture from last summer, is he looking at me or at something over my shoulder? Was that anniversary post he wrote just a collection of nice-sounding words? New photos started showing up in his feed, too. A picture of a single pint of beer on a table, catching the afternoon light. No caption. I'd stare at it and my heart would start beating a little too fast, a dull thudding in my chest. A cool sweat would break out on my hands. Was he alone? Or was someone just outside the frame? I'd put my phone face down on the table, trying to make it stop. I'd tell myself I was being crazy, and then a minute later, I'd pick it up again, zooming in, looking for the reflection of a face in the curve of the beer glass. Sleep was hard to come by. I'd lie awake in the dark, and my mind would just invent new people for him. A woman who was quiet and loved books. A woman who was adventurous and climbed mountains. I'd play out their conversations in my head, hearing his voice telling her about his day, seeing her hand rest on his arm. They felt so real that I'd wake up feeling empty and exhausted, like I'd been running all night. Food didn't make much sense either. I'd open the fridge and just stare at the things inside. A carton of milk, a jar of olives. They felt like objects from someone else's life. I felt like I was floating through my own apartment, just a ghost running on coffee and a low, constant hum of anxiety. I thought I was hiding it well. I was still going to work, still seeing friends. I was fine. But then I saw what he'd done. He hadn't added a new picture. He'd taken one away. He went into our shared album, into the archive, and deleted a single photograph. It was the one I took of him last year when we went camping. He's looking at the campfire and the light is dancing in his eyes. He has this small secret smile on his face because he didn't know I was watching. It was my favorite picture because it felt like it was purely him, seen through my eyes. And he'd reached back in time and just erased it. He had unloved that version of himself. Everything went quiet. The air felt thick and heavy. All the breath left my body. That was it. That was the moment the floor gave out. I drove home from work, and the city lights were just blurry streaks through my windshield. I walked into my apartment, and the silence was different. It wasn't empty anymore. His absence felt like a person sitting in the room with me, a heavy presence that made it hard to breathe. I slid down the wall in the kitchen until I was sitting on the cold floor. I just sat there and watched the light fade from the window, watching the shadows get long. In the corner, a spider was slowly, patiently building a web. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything at all. I held my hand up in the dim light, and it looked like I could see right through it. This wasn't just a breakup. It felt like I was being erased. This was the bottom, a quiet, airless place where you stop being a person and just become a memory that hasn't faded yet. Sometime in the middle of the night, I managed to get to my laptop. The light from the screen felt harsh and bright. My fingers moved on their own and typed, "How to get a thought out of your head." I scrolled past articles and videos, and then an ad popped up. A link to something called The Circuit Breaker, a 7-day cognitive reset. It sounded cold and mechanical, like a repair manual for a toaster. It felt a little insulting, honestly, but I was on the kitchen floor. I didn't have anything to lose. I clicked it. Day 1 was called the blackout. The instructions were simple and direct. Block his number. Then the hard part. Archive every single photograph. Put them all away in a folder where I wouldn't see them. My hand was shaking as I held it over his name on my phone. This was the real goodbye, the one I had to choose. I pressed block. Then I spent the next hour moving all those little squares of light, all those memories, into a hidden folder I just named X. The silence on my phone felt huge and scary. The guide said to write down one achievement for the day. I wrote on a napkin. I survived the silence. It didn't feel true, but I wrote it anyway. Day 2 was the anchor. The task was to make my bed. That's it. My bed was just a tangle of sheets and sadness. I stripped it all off. I put on clean sheets and pulled the blanket up tight, smoothing out all the wrinkles. It was the first small piece of order I'd created in a long time. I stood back and looked at it. One small calm island in the middle of everything. I felt a tiny flicker of something that wasn't pain. My achievement, I made a place to rest. Day 3 was the threshold. Walk outside for 15 minutes. And leave the phone at home. I put on a sweatshirt and stepped outside. The cool night air on my face was a surprise. It was real. I walked and I made myself look at things. The specific shade of yellow of a street sign. A dog barking a few blocks away. A crack in the sidewalk. For 15 minutes, I wasn't trapped in my own head. I was just a person walking through the world. I came back inside and felt like I could breathe a little deeper. I wrote, I remembered the world is bigger than my room. The next few days were more of the same. Small, quiet acts. Day 4 was eating a piece of toast and actually tasting it. Day 5 was sitting still and imagining my thoughts about him were leaves on a stream, just watching them float by instead of grabbing onto them. It was hard at first, but slowly, a little bit of space started to open up. The morning of day 6, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. I just woke up and the very first thought in my head wasn't about him. It wasn't that familiar heavy ache in my chest. My first thought was, I'm thirsty. It was the most normal, boring, beautiful thought I'd had in months. It was like a stuck record had finally been nudged, and a new song was playing. This morning was day 7. I was at the sink watering a plant that I'd forgotten about, watching the dry soil soak up the water. And then a thought just landed, soft and clear. I hadn't thought about the photo album all day. The nervous twitch in my thumb was gone. The need to know, to dig, to understand, it had just dissolved. The heavy feeling in my apartment was gone. The silence was no longer a weight. It was just quiet. I'm telling you all of this, the whole embarrassing story, because I know that kitchen floor. I know what it feels like to be erased. I know how it feels when the downward spiral seems like the only way to go. I never would have believed that a sterile, step-by-step list could help. It didn't magically heal me. The scar is still there. But it gave me a set of instructions. It showed me how to build a little lifeboat, one small, simple step at a time. It showed me where the circuit breaker was. So if you're there right now, on your own floor in the dark, staring at a screen and feeling yourself start to fade, just know this. There is a way back. It's not big or dramatic. It's small and quiet and feels almost too simple to work. But it does. Find your own simple list. Start with one thing. Make the bed. Block the number. Take a 15-minute walk. Just do one thing. It might be the first stone you lay on the path back to yourself.